Welcome once again to the Kingdom Conversations Women's Edition. I am Alicia Halliburton, one of your lovely co-hosts, and I am also here with my other co-host,
Tori Anderson.
And Crystal Fulton.
And it's exciting to be here once again. We have been getting into some really good topics, and what we're going to be talking about today is not new. We have touched on these areas times before, but we're going to kind of spin it and just talk about it from a different lens. I feel like you can never talk enough about just your identity, how we have grown as women, as wives, as mothers. I know, speaking for myself, I learned something just about every day in one area or another. So we're just going to kind of have just an open dialogue. And of course, we always do it from with the lens of a kingdom perspective. So excited to talk to you ladies tonight. But first, we do have a hot topic to address. And I came across this one recently, and you guys, I'm not sure if you all had already seen it, but I'll just read what it says. So it's Penn's Leah Thomas wins the NCAA championship in the 500 free. And what is unique is that this is the first known transgender athlete to win a NCAA swimming championship. And so I will let you ladies weigh in. What were your thoughts when you saw this? Crystal, let's start with you.
There's a purpose, right, for women and for men. Like, there's a purpose why that's separated. So I was just wondering, my first thought was, why are we blurring the lines? Like, why are those boundaries being crossed now? But so that was like my first reaction to it is what happened to that separation. So I'll just start off with that.
My first thought was I realized that I've become a little bit desensitized to the whole transgender, like all the gender inequality issues, because when I first saw it, I didn't see the article. I saw people making jokes about it, and I was like, well, we've seen stuff like this before. Like, what's the big deal about this particular case? Like, we know that it's not a kingdom concept. We know that it's you can say you transgender all day long, but your biological makeup is a man. It's not like a woman's. It's a reason, like you were saying, Crystal, that they're different. Just men are just stronger. They're taller, they're longer. I don't know much about swimming, but men longer, I'm sure that has an effect, and men stronger has an effect in how fast you go. So that was my biggest thing, is just and I was like, I'm a believer, and I'm feeling like I'm desensitized to it. What is the rest of the world, what's that approach? So yeah, that was kind of my take on it.
Yeah, that's huge. The word desensitized. And I know that agenda, that has been, this has been in the works for decades.
Right.
Just that exposure here and there, to the point where they want it to seem normal. They want it to seem, like this is kind of off topic, but not off topic at all. I was noticing, I was in the store, and I was in the women's clothes section, but I was noticing like the clothing looked, I was like, that looks like that could be Demetrius' jacket. I was like, whoa, wait a minute. That's what they want. Like a lot of these are, you have like, what is it, boyfriend jeans, and just all of these things to where it's trying to merge and to blur the lines, just as you were saying. And so that desensitization, I feel like it's a result of the culture of darkness being put in front of us so much that it's starting to even appear normal. And I know that's not necessarily what you meant, Tori, that is not, our normal, but I think about my kids. I think about, people who this is being put in their face as normal and being presented to them as normal. And so I'm wondering, what is it going to look like, for the next generation and thereafter, as far as accepting this as right. And I'll never forget when I was in grad school, I felt a shift and noticed that, it used to be a time whereas when you would hear things like this, the majority of people opposed it openly. Now, I feel like it's shifted to where if you oppose it openly, then you're shamed and I don't know, people come after you. People will come after you. And it's so ironic because it's like you would think that the people who preach acceptance and tolerance would be accepting and tolerant, but it's hypocritical. Anyways, I'm getting off just a little bit. So to respond to the actual post, I feel like it's not fair. Like, if anything, why not y'all have your own league? Like, why is it that you have to force it on everybody else? But from a kingdom perspective, it just goes to what you ladies have already said. Like, we know that it's that it goes against kingdom laws, but it just goes to show that the world's culture, the world's gonna do what they're gonna do. And if we it more than anything, it just spoke the need for kingdom culture for us to make sure that we're still a force in the earth and that we are also not mixing and blending and accepting this as okay, because it's not. Yeah. So those are my thoughts. Did you guys have any other thoughts about that?
No, I wanted to say, Alicia, I don't know if you noticed, you mentioned that about you in the clothing section. Our nephew was telling us, he's 21, just turned 21, and he was telling us that a lot of the clothes being sold now are actually unisex, that they don't have a lot of gendered clothing. And I was like y'all don't see what's going on, so how those lines are just being blurred and they're just being blindly accepted. So
yeah. Just to piggyback off of that, like recently we saw some skinny jeans for little boys in the little boy section. And I was like, wow, really? In a 4T, some skinny jeans for boys.
Oh yeah. That's definitely super popular and prominent. And I think that really is the point. Like, just because something becomes popularized does not mean that it's acceptable. But because people, and we have to be careful as ambassadors that, thinking, oh, well, that's just old fashioned and that's just how, no, righteousness is still right. Like, that doesn't change. The scripture talks about, like, the Father said himself, I am Yah, I change not. It's y'all who keep coming up with stuff and changing things up and allowing the culture of the world to determine who you are and how you act. And, I think that's why it's so important for us to have our own culture. Like, what should it look like for us? I feel like nowadays there's no distinction. Like, I feel like you used to at least be able to see, even if it was people in churches wearing a skirt to the ground, well, at least you knew they were saved for real. Like, now you don't know. So I don't know, I guess that's another point. How do you guys feel about, since we're kind of talking about fashion, like, what are your thoughts about I don't know how to pose the question, but what should that look like as a kingdom ambassador? What should fashion look like as a woman? Even, even yourself, like, what do you, how do you view it?
Just to piggyback off of what you said, and I am going to answer your question. It was one day, me and Octavian, we were talking, and he was talking about how, like, these men are wearing these, like, long t-shirts now. And there's also men in the pulpit wearing these long t-shirts, and they're kind of close fitting, but it's almost like they look like dresses, but they wear them with jeans, and how, like, it's pushing the agenda for men to be more feminized. And even like you said, in the church. But I just recently learned about how like our dress, we can actually promote rebellion. We can promote all of this stuff as kingdom citizens. So we have to be careful with how we dress. We have to be careful, what we reveal, even, our arms, our chest, all of that. Like, it needs to be covered up. It needs to be, we need to be modest. And of course, that's, like you said, it's old fashioned in today's society. It's like, the lower the shirt or, the higher the shorts, that's what's in now. So as kingdom citizens, we got to pull it up and pull it down. So
Tori, what about you?
I mean, there's not really much to add to that. But I feel like even if you dressing like, if it covers up a butt cheek and cover up a boob, it's still modest compared to what they're doing now. Like, stuff is see-through, stuff is like covering up. That's just like a start. I don't know, can't explain it, but definitely like just align ourselves with scripture. Go back to what scripture says about how we should carry ourselves and how we should dress, but also just to dress up like our mindsets about clothing. And because what's on the inside is gonna come out. Right. And so really just address what's going on inside the person first, and I guess get to that root. And I don't know, I've always said that you could be fashionable but still modest and appropriate. And I probably said this to you, Alicia, like, I love the way my mother-in-law dresses, because she dresses she doesn't look like an old lady. Like, she'll tell you she's an old lady, she really ain't that old, but she dresses really nice and she carries herself really nice, but she doesn't look frumpy. She doesn't look like her skirt ain't all the way down to her ankles, but she still looks nice, and it just has a modern feel to it. And I think as believers, like, we still can look nice. We can still carry ourselves modestly and don't look like, we from the 1800s. So I mean, and deep down, I've always wanted to dress kind of like a hippie. So, but I'm not a fashion person.
Why hippie, Tori?
Right, where'd that come from?
Because I've always loved like big loose clothes, but for so long I wouldn't do it because it wasn't cool. And so now I'm just kind of like, now I'm kind of in a mix between I don't care, but I also want to look nice. So yeah, it's just a whole thing going on over here.
Well, I'm glad that you like have that example. I think that's important. I think a lot of women may not have an example of someone that they can look to. And I think for me personally, I grew up a PK. For those who don't know, that's a pastor's kid. And I always remember feeling like what's the word? My parents were super strict. I couldn't wear skinny jeans when everyone had skinny jeans. And I actually remember when Air Apostle first came out. I don't know if you guys wore Air Apostle. So I went to school where we had to wear a uniform. And so those shirts were like more form-fitting. And then girls, then they would wear like leggings underneath their skirts. Now, you don't have to do that. And I remember my folks were like, you not wearing no Air Apostle and you not wearing no leggings under, like, no, we're not doing it. And I just felt like I was missing out. But I'm glad that they put in, oh gosh, I have so many memories of my dad going through my closet and just like throwing all my clothes away. Like, he would just like, no, just start over. Like, nope, we're not doing it. Just start over. And I feel like, in the moment, I was so upset. And of course, all my friends were like, oh my gosh, your dad, but my goodness, where are the dads who are going to stand up for something and who are going, well, I know Demetrius is one of those dads, because even now he's like, nope, and I'm not wearing that. I'm like, she's 9 months. He's like, nope, she ain't wearing it. No swimsuit, no. But in all seriousness though, like, it's just, I'm thankful for that today, even though I couldn't see it then. So yeah, I heard somebody said they got the same daddy.
Yeah, I got so many stories like that. We ain't got time for all of them. But yeah,
I know.
yeah, he threw away so much stuff.
Man. So I guess, that hot topic really transitions into kind of what I want to talk about. And that really relates to just what makes you a woman? Like how do you define it? How has your view of womanhood changed? So that was like 5 questions in one. So answer whichever one you want to. Crystal, I'll start with you.
Being a kingdom citizen, you learn the world's view of what womanhood is and kingdom view of what womanhood is two totally different things. And learning how to submit, not only, but like submit to the Father, for one. Humility and not being so domineering in your marriage or with your kids, being humble. And that's one of the things that's really been illuminated to me, is having humility over being a dominating woman, a woman that's so domineering, and how much damage that does, not only, to people around you, but also to your character, the character that the Father wants to portray in us as women. So yeah, that's one. Like, there's so much. I'll let you go, Tori.
I guess my view changed of just being that career driven woman, I should say, just kind of always putting your value in your measuring, and maybe y'all can help me put it into words, but how you value yourself, how you measure how valuable you are, your self-worth, that's what I'm trying to say, basing it on your career, because it wasn't when I stopped working completely, I won't say I completely stopped working. When I stopped working a W-2 job, I'll say that I realized a lot of feministic thoughts still had to be uprooted. A lot of thoughts of how I viewed myself through a job still had to be uprooted, and also kind of to piggyback off what Crystal was saying about that dominating, just feeling like I always have to say something. I always got to say what I was thinking. I always got to make my point come across. And, sometimes I've learned I don't want to say the beauty, but I've learned that it's okay to just say okay and keep going sometimes. And, the scriptures say only a fool say everything that's on his mind. So just back to kind of what you were saying, Crystal, it's just like a continuing learning process. But I guess for me, one of the biggest things I learned is that women are communicators. And for a long time, I saw that a woman communicating was a bad thing. Because, we see just on TV how these TV husbands are complaining about nagging wives, and, the wife always saying this and that. And so I guess I internalized that as, me using my voice is almost a negative thing. But at the same time, you have that, well, you need to speak up. You need to, speak your voice, have a voice, use it. So I guess just learning how to communicate effectively and making sure you're being in the face, not, in the face, like, yeah, I can't really explain it, but yeah.
I wish our listeners could see what you just did. So hopefully they were able to make that distinction. But
I got one tonight.
I got what you were saying, and I agree 1,000 and 100,000, if I can make that up, percent. Balancing. And what you were referencing was one of the Hebrew words for woman, matza izer nigad. Nigad meaning being in front of or in the face of, and talking about like how we are good communicators. I agree with you that it's been distorted. Just that role has been distorted. And so, like you said, no, you can't, now I'm trying to put in the words, like, it's acceptable for you to speak your mind and be defiant almost, because you don't want a man to tramp over you. But yet that softness, that submissiveness, like that's looked down upon. And I agree that I've also had to really learn, because I've always been very vocal. So, and I've never had a problem in the area of communication, but I learned that even though I'm a communicator, that doesn't mean I'm an effective communicator. And everything that is said out of my mouth, communication has to do with so much more than that. And I am actually more powerful when I communicate through influence and through my position and through staying in the right position versus having a prove a point or having to be right or having to speak what's on my mind, kind of like how you were saying, because that's not always what's the best thing to do. Even if you think, you know, it needs to be said or whoever needs to hear it, that doesn't mean that it's going to be effective or that's the most effective way. So I like what both of you all said, you know, talking about like that humility and not being domineering. So I don't know.
One thing that I've learned recently, I can communicate a lot, like quantity, like I can communicate a lot, but it's so important that the quality of your communication comes forward. Let's say me and someone else, we're having a debate about something. I'm listening to them, but I'm listening to respond. I'm talking, I'm saying a whole bunch of what I believe, but I'm not actually listening to what they're saying. So when I communicate to them, it's just a whole lot of talk. I'm not addressing what they're talking about. So that's kind of what I mean.
Yeah, no, I get where you're coming from. Tori, did you have anything to add to that?
Mm-mm.
Yeah, I definitely have been in that position. So it wasn't that I got what I was picking up what you was laying down. So what do you guys feel like now that you have transitioned from a single woman to a married woman? What did that transition look like and how did your identity change? Okay, Tori, you go first.
Oh gosh, it's just that's a loaded question, Alicia. Because I feel like when I got married, I mean I was still in college, like undergrad when I'm not saying that that's minimum, but I mean I was 22. No, 22. Yes, I was 22. I hadn't graduated yet. I just feel like around that time in my life, it was just so many like major life events happening. So like those first 2 years of our marriage, we got married, we moved out in our own place together. Then a year later, we got a house. Then I graduated college and I had a baby all in like the same year. So it was like a lot of like life transitions going on that I feel like I didn't, like life was going past me and I was trying to catch up with it. And so I feel like a lot of my changing and maturing didn't happen until the baby was here. And so it's like, and I just feel like there's something that people don't talk to you about, like how difficult transitions in life are, you know, just coming out of college into being an adult or coming out of learning to have a house. I know I used to hear people say, oh, we just want to get used to being homeowners. And I'm like, you just live in the house. But there's so much that comes with being a homeowner. So, man, Alicia, you and these questions. Oh gosh. I started changing when it came to me quitting my job. Because when I first was about to quit my job, they let me work from home. So I think some things started to change then. But really, when I let the job go, not saying that I wasn't a woman, but I feel like I started maturing more when I quit, because that's when the Holy Spirit really just started showing me how many societal norms and societal ideas that I still had and adopted. So I was trying to mix kingdom and mix the world together, and no wonder nothing was working, because you can't mix the two together. So I was still trying to be a mix of that domineering woman, but still trying to submit, and it wasn't working. And I really wasn't submitting in the first place. So So I guess that when I like I said, when I really started letting the Holy Spirit deal with me about leaving that job, and I was submitting to him and being obedient, and I noticed that one thing I did, I started treating my husband better. And so that's when I saw, I'm hope I'm answering, this is answering your question, Alicia, but I saw how integrated the Holy Spirit is, how integrated the word is, because when it's like when he deals with one area of your life, those principles that you learned are applicable to so many areas of your life. And so as I started submitting, I started, those principles that I was applying to my marriage that were being applied to me as well. So the change couldn't come until I changed. And so that it's kind of I think that answer. Did that answer the question?
You answered 10 questions, okay? You preaching over there. I'm trying to stay in my chair because I done threw books at her. I took my shoes off. Like, no, that was really good. Crystal, what about you? Talk a little bit about just that transition from being a single woman to married woman.
As a single woman, I put like so much value into what I did. You know, my identity is in what I did. And because I worked so hard in it, like I put so much pride into that. And I thought that that was pretty much kind of what made me who I was in a sense. After getting married and coming into the knowledge of the kingdom, I started realizing that, gosh, for one, coming into the knowledge of the kingdom, that's education. Like I was just telling someone today, like me being a nurse actually holds no value other than the fact that I have the education. And I'm able to apply that to kingdom. I'm able to apply that to helping someone in the kingdom, but not it being like an identity thing. I'm more so of, I'm an ambassador. So coming into the knowledge of that, and I was telling someone how I really realized that when I was in the midst of a conversation of a patient's mom and a doctor, and they were pretty much going back and forth on beliefs and how they were, she was basically going on her faith and the doctor was going on her belief system, basically like, this is what happens in the medical field. And as I sat there, I really realized like being a nurse isn't the end. It's not, that's not what it is. It's me operating as a kingdom citizen. It's me being able to use the education that I have for the glory of Elohim, as opposed to using it for the world's agenda.
Both of you. So I'm gonna come back to it because there's something else that we need to pull out of that. But I love what you said about just how you were able to identify that you were formulating your identity based on what you did. And then Tori, you kind of touched on the same thing. Like you kind of accepted that ideal that it's it's my career that makes me a woman. And I don't say that makes you a woman, but like you pulled some of your self-worth and confidence from that position versus from the position that we see as far as the qualities of a woman that we pull from the understanding of Masa Izumigad, a communicator, a support, not one who carries vision, but the one who supports the vision of the family and so on. So man, it was so many things that you guys said that I'm trying to figure out which one to address. But I guess let's also think of this question. Well, I'll speak for myself first. So how my identity changed from being single to being married, I realized that after I got married, that the vision that I had and the goals that I were going after, when I got married, I had to let that go because now it wasn't about all of my goals and my aspirations and the things that I wanted to achieve. It was about what is the vision for the family, and the Father has put that in my husband. So I really need to understand what his vision is and be an assistance to that. And so I think I'm glad that I was able to understand that early on, because when I got pregnant and Demetrius wanted me to stay home, I was just like, okay, like I didn't fight it. I wasn't, and I think some women may have been a little bit more upset by it, because I literally had just spent, eight, I just said 8 years. That's not true, but a lot of years in school, undergrad, and then getting my graduate degree. And then I went home. And so from a worldly perspective, I think some people would view it as like old fashioned or domestic, or, just weird and how that was handled. But I knew that that's what I was supposed to be doing. So I didn't fight it. But as it relates to like my identity, again, just when I got married, it was like, okay. And I'll never forget, because I remember having a conversation with Dad about it, because I've always been ambitious and like, yeah, I want to start this center, and I had all these things. And he was like, yep, he actually was talking to Demetrius. He was like, you have a woman who, has a lot of giftings and talents, but you're going to have to direct her, because she needs to pour that into you and pour that into the family, not into her dream and what she was basically going after as a single woman. So that's what it looked like to me, or that's what it looked like for me. Can you guys talk a little bit more about, I guess, the difference when you became a wife, or can you relate to that, or not so much?
When you were talking, what came to me is something that Pastor has said, that, when two people come together, like, we are both powerful people, but one has to submit to the other. And it's our role as a wife to submit to our husbands. And what was really powerful was that it's the same as like Yeshua submitting to the Father. Like, he was really powerful, but he chose to say, hey, I'm gonna let my will, be your will. And that's pretty much the same as what we say as wives. Is like, your vision is going to be my vision. I'm going to put my vision aside and help you with yours, what the Father has put on you for the family. And I'm going to help you, as like we had mentioned, as a matzah neged, to fulfill that vision. And another thing is, for us, or for me, that I've learned, is learning the laws and speaking the laws, instead of, and letting that be the influence for my husband, speaking that over him, or speaking that to him, and reminding him what the Father has already spoke to him. So that has been really powerful, because I actually have seen that, like, I've seen that that switch happen. And to actually see it is amazing. Like, when you change, how can I say, you change your conversation. Like, instead you're encouraging, you're reminding him, hey, you remember when you told me that the Father told you this? The response is so much more positive, as opposed to, being negative, or, being condescending or something like that. So
yeah, it's so funny, real quick, Crystal, when I got that illumination that I needed to encourage and support. And I was like, when I first heard that, I was like, well, who's going to encourage me if I'm so busy encouraging him? But, one thing, Alicia, that while you were speaking, one thing that I thought about is that I had, like you had, ideas of things that I wanted to do. But I think one thing for me is that I don't feel like I ever just saw myself as this single woman, because I got married so young. I was living at home, went to college, and I mean, I stayed in school, but for the most part, I was under my parents. Like, anytime a decision had to be made, I called my dad. Like, that was the first thing I did. And so I feel like I really, even though I stayed by myself for a few years in college, I feel like I really just went from under my dad directly to under my husband.
mm-hmm.
And in a way, I feel like it was good and bad, because I expected him to be so much like my dad. And if you know my dad is very much military man. Like, he is 100% man. And so I was expecting my husband, who was still learning how to, lead, still learning, kingdom. And, his dad is nothing like my dad. So he grew up in a whole nother setting than me. So that was, so in a way, I remember almost feeling like I had to do stuff because I was like, well, this y'all ain't finna do this y'all not going. And then I remember telling him, you need to lead. So I'm sitting here like, trying to push him to lead and not even standing back and being patient and realizing, okay, this is a role that he has to learn. And just like, this is a role that I got to learn too. So, yeah, I just, and it just reminded me of that, Alicia, that I just never saw myself as this single woman. I just remember I always saw myself as a young woman that was still under my dad, and I got married, and I guess I thought life was gonna work itself out when I got married. I was shocked, but
You know what though, Tori? I'm so glad you said that because I definitely relate to that. And at the same time, that's how it's supposed to be. We're supposed to leave one father and go unto another father's covering. That's how it's supposed to be. And so I feel blessed that I was able to, because kind of like you, like, I actually was in my parents' house until I got married. And then, we got our own and that sort of thing. And so I'm actually thankful for that. Like, I know that that's how the Father wants it to be. But at the same time, I also fell into the same trap as you did and expected my husband, who was still learning, to be in a place that my dad was in, who has been in the word for decades and decades. And, and Demetrius was just coming into the knowledge of some things. So I'm glad that you brought that up. And then Crystal, earlier you were talking about you have learned being a repeater of the vision and reminding your husband, like, the Father, remember he said this, and encouraging and supporting. And I had to learn to repeat the vision and not repeat the flaws and like, you did this wrong, and be so critical versus, and I think about the scripture that says you call things that be not as though they were. Like, he know he messed up. You know it, he know it, everybody knows it. So it's no point in being critical, but instead, like, speak what you're wanting to see. Speak, pull that out of him. Like, use your influence and use your the inner cheerleader, I guess you could say, and build him up. And I think that was something that I really had to work on because, kind of like you, Tori, I'm used to that military dad. And, if anybody knows my dad, like, it's so funny. Anytime we have something for him, and people start talking about like how important they've been in their life, most people say like just about the discipline. He like, why y'all always talk about discipline? Like, I don't, like, that's all I do is correct people. But I don't think he realizes like it's good. Like, we need that. But also that's what I'm used to. I'm used to, like, we know you're doing good, so we're gonna talk about that. Let's talk about what you need to work on, because he's a mentor and he grooms. And so I brought that mentality into my marriage, and I would and it wasn't coming from a place of trying to tear my husband down, but it was coming from a place kind of like you, Tori. You said you felt like you basically had to help him lead. You had to help him do. And so that, it was really coming from a place of, I want to help, so let me help you. But I had to really understand, and Demetrius even said it, he would talk about his mom. He was like, my mom, she's my biggest cheerleader. And when he first said that, I was like, but why you need somebody to tell you you're doing good? Like, that's I looked at it the wrong way. I felt like, I'm not going to just try to make you feel good just to make you feel good. I didn't get it. So anyways, to make a long story longer, I really had to learn, like, not to repeat the flaws, but to repeat the vision. And so I wanted to ask you ladies, what does, because Crystal, you touched on this about like helping we know that we help our husbands with the vision. What does that look like for you? Because I know it looks different for the three of us?
It's him trying to figure out what our vision, what the vision is for us, and me actually encouraging and not like putting my ideas and my thoughts into it, and just letting him seek the Father on where he feels like this family should go. As far as like business wise and all of that, it's me stepping back and being like, oh, okay, if that's where, okay, so that's where you want it to go, so we'll go that way. Before, it would be like, I don't know about that. And another thing is also my attitude, like how we can be submissive and be like, okay, but the attitude of it could just be like, I don't think this is going to work, but I'll just go ahead and go with it. And that even speaks more loudly than you just saying no, because it also speaks, hey, I don't trust you're going to hear from the Father. I don't trust that the Father's speaking to you. It says so much. It's really trusting that he's hearing from the Father and trusting the Father, and also being aware of my attitude, my response to when he does speak that, hey, this is the vision for the family. This is where I want to take things, and really just trusting it and just being like, okay, just let you be the man and be the source. And I be the woman and not take that domineering position and try to lead things when that's not my position to lead.
One thing I tell DJ all the time is that he's not a Pinto, but he's a McLaren. And one thing is that just understanding, and the reason why I'm telling him that is or why I repeat it so much, is for him to understand just how valuable he is, to understand how valuable the vision that the Father has given to him. And so one thing that we know that as ambassadors, that we have to manage everything, including our time, our resources, the vision that the Father has given us. And so one thing is that I'm always reminding him of, like you said, Crystal, repeating the vision back to him, repeating like qualities in him, things about him that he does good. Because like Alicia was saying, they know when they messed up. They know when they did something they shouldn't have. And I would be lying if I didn't say that I have like just gone off the deep end, like, no, you shouldn't have did this, XYZ. But the more I mature, it's like, okay, he did it, like we can talk about it, and then we keep on going, and you said something, Crystal, that reminded me of something that I used to do a long time ago, is that I used to get up before DJ and I would write him just like a little note on a sticky note, and I would leave it on his nightstand, so when he woke up in the morning he would see it. Mm-hmm. And so like he started keeping those, and I just, like you said, Crystal, I noticed a change in him. And so really just going back to repeating the vision, repeating the word. He has certain scriptures that he talks about, that he says that he meditates on, and I'm like, okay, DJ, well, this is what you said, and I'll even repeat that scripture back to him. Or if there's times where just things are just chaotic, I'm like, okay, well, this is what the word says, and we're gonna repeat it right now. So just repeating things. And another thing, he always tell me that he's working for 40-year-old DJ. So I'm like, okay, well, you working for 40-year-old DJ, what do we need to be doing right now? So just and even in doing that, Crystal, like, it encourages me. I joked earlier about like, well, who's gonna encourage me? But encouraging my husband and putting myself in the position that I'm supposed to operate in encourages me. And also our children see that. So that's a whole nother topic. So yeah, I hope that answered your question, Alicia.
Yeah, that did. That was good. You said something that sparked a thought about how he is working for 40-year-old DJ. And isn't that what is so amazing about how when the Father puts vision in men, how a lot of times when they do have that idea, they're looking at the big idea. They're looking at the big picture. And we have the ability to help them get there. And that's something that I really had to work with Demetrius on, is like, okay, got it. That's what we're working towards. What's step A? Because we're talking, what's step A to B? Because we're talking about Z and we can't go from A to Z. So how are we going to get, there? And then also just repeating that vision back, I feel like it helps with focus. It helps like, okay, we're gonna start here. And also, I have to be careful about that too, because I never want to come off as like trying to control what the Father has given him to do. I'm here to assist and to help, but also I know my husband and I know that, in certain areas, like he needs that focus, he needs that direction, so that, we do kind of keep chugging towards that, because there's so much in him and so much that we could be doing, but that doesn't mean that's what we should be doing. And timing is everything. And, I'll be transparent in that, a few years back, Demetrius really, really wanted to go into real estate. That's all he's, that's all he's wanted to do. Like from the time like we, started to figure out what the vision was for our family. And while I wanted to support him in that, I knew that it wasn't the time. And so I had to pray like, okay, Father, how do I handle this? Because I don't want to step on his toes, but I know that it's not time right now. Like I know that. And at the same time, I didn't want to just say that and then cause more damage. And so I didn't. And I just prayed. And sure enough, he came back to me and was like, I think we're gonna wait on that. I think we're gonna wait, and let's prepare. And I was just like, oh, thank you, Father, because I did not want to make a huge mistake. And then but either way, I was like, I'm just gonna trust in the Father. And sure enough, he orchestrated things to where everything is happening in the right timing. So yeah, I think that's all we have time for on this episode. So we will definitely have to continue just in this vein another time. But we want to thank you all so much for tuning in, and we will see you on the next episode.